Have you ever met someone you thought you knew, but later discovered you didn't know them at all? Someone who could smile at you in the daylight and still hide something in the dark? My name is Daniel, I'm 35 years old, and I'm about to tell you the story of the man who lived right next door to me, a man with two faces. And trust me, you'll never look at your neighbors the same way again. The new neighbor. I've lived in this neighborhood almost my whole life. It's quiet here. The streets are lined with old trees, and most of the houses look the same. White walls, small front yards, a little fence. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and strangers stand out instantly. About 2 years ago, a new man moved into the house right next to mine. I still remember the day the moving truck came. It was early morning, and I was sipping my coffee when I saw him, tall, maybe in his early 40s, wearing a neat suit even though it was Saturday. His hair was combed perfectly, his shoes shined. He looked like the kind of person who had everything under control. He introduced himself as Mr. Harris. His handshake was firm, his smile warm, and his voice calm. He told me he had moved here for a fresh start. I didn't ask what that meant. People have their reasons. At first, he seemed like the perfect neighbor. He mowed his lawn every week, kept his house spotless, and even brought me a box of muffins one Sunday morning. He was polite to everyone. The old lady across the street adored him. The kids on the block waved whenever they saw him. If you met him, you'd think, this is a good man. But I've learned that people are like books. Some have beautiful covers but dark, twisted stories hidden inside. Strange things begin. It started small. One night, around midnight, I was taking out the trash when I saw a light flicker in his house. Not the warm glow of a lamp, but a strange, cold blue light, like from a TV. But it wasn't the living room. It was coming from the basement. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I noticed something else. The next morning, Mr. Harris looked different. Not in his clothes or hair, but in his eyes. They seemed tired, haunted. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing noises from his house at odd hours. Sometimes it sounded like someone crying, sometimes like angry shouting, but I never saw anyone go in or out except him. I told myself it was none of my business. People have private lives, and it's not my place to dig. But something about him bothered me. In the day, he was friendly, charming. But at night, I felt a strange tension coming from that house, as if it was holding a secret. The face beneath the face. One afternoon, I was fixing my fence when I heard his voice behind me. "Need a hand?" he asked, smiling as always. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw something else. It was quick, a flicker, a flash, but it was there. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I don't know if you've ever met someone who could make you feel safe and uneasy at the same time. But that's exactly how Mr. Harris made me feel. It was as if he wore a mask in the daylight, and only at night did he take it off. One evening, my suspicion grew stronger. I was walking home from the store when I saw him standing at the edge of our street, talking to a man I had never seen before. The stranger looked rough, tattoos, messy hair, wearing a leather jacket. When Mr. Harris noticed me, his whole posture changed. He quickly ended the conversation, patted the man on the back, and walked away as if nothing had happened. But I had seen it. The way he spoke to that man was different. No smile. No politeness. Just cold, sharp words. That night, I lay in bed wondering, who exactly was my neighbor? And why did it feel like he was living two separate lives? The cracks in the mask. After that night, I started noticing more cracks in Mr. Harris's perfect neighbor image. They were small things at first. Nothing you could point to as proof, but enough to make me uneasy. One Saturday morning, I went out for my usual jog. The air was cool, the streets still quiet. As I passed by his house, I noticed his front door was slightly open. I thought maybe he was bringing groceries in or airing out the place. But when I glanced inside, I saw something strange. A large duffel bag sitting on the floor near the door, half unzipped. Inside, I caught a glimpse of thick bundles of cash. Not just a few bills, I mean stacks wrapped tightly in rubber bands. Before I could even process what I was seeing, Mr. Harris appeared, pulling the door shut with a calm smile. "Morning, Daniel," he said, as if nothing was wrong. I managed to mumble a morning back, but my mind was spinning. Why would he have that much cash just lying around? The night of the scream. A week later, I was woken up by a sound that chilled me to the bone, a scream. It was sharp, desperate, and definitely coming from his house. I shot out of bed, heart pounding. I rushed to my window, but his house looked dark and quiet, like nothing had happened. I stood there for a few seconds, torn between going over or calling someone. Then I heard it, a second sound. Not a scream this time, but a deep, muffled sob. And then silence. The next morning, I saw him in his yard, trimming his rose bushes, smiling and waving like everything was fine. But there was something different about him. His right hand was wrapped in a bandage, and there was a small bruise forming near his jaw. When I asked about it, he laughed it off. Just clumsy, I guess. You know how it is. No, I didn't know how it was. And I was starting to wonder if anyone really did. The invitation. One evening, as the sun was setting, I was out front watering my plants when he came over holding a small bottle of wine. "Daniel," he said warmly, "I've been meaning to thank you for being such a great neighbor. How about dinner at my place tomorrow night? My treat." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse. Something about stepping into his house made me nervous. But another part of me thought, maybe this was my chance to understand him better. Maybe I'd finally see the real Mr. Harris. The next night, I walked over to his place. The moment I stepped inside, I noticed how spotless it was. Every piece of furniture looked new. The air smelled faintly of cologne and something chemical. He had a nice dinner set up, pasta, salad, wine. And for the first half hour, everything felt normal. He told stories about his childhood, his travels, his business work, though he never gave details about what that actually meant. But then something strange happened. The slip. He was pouring more wine when his phone rang. I couldn't help but notice the name that flashed on the screen. Rico. He glanced at me, his friendly smile fading for just a moment, and then answered. His voice changed instantly. Gone was the polite tone he used with me and the other neighbors. Instead, it was cold, commanding, almost threatening. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught enough. Shipment. No mistakes this time. And you know what happens if you cross me. When he hung up, his smile returned like nothing had happened. Sorry about that, he said casually. Just work stuff. I nodded, pretending not to notice the shift, but inside, I was more certain than ever. There was another side to this man, a side he didn't want anyone to see. The warning. A few days later, I was sitting on my porch reading when the rough-looking man I'd seen before, the one in the leather jacket, walked past. He slowed down when he saw me and said, "You live next to Harris, right?" I nodded cautiously. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Stay out of his business. People who get too close to him don't always end up well." And without another word, he walked away. I sat there frozen, the words echoing in my head. Stay out of his business. Don't get too close. But how could I not? I was already too deep. I had to know who my neighbor really was, and why he was hiding behind that perfect smile. Shadows after dark. That warning from the man in the leather jacket stayed in my head for days. Stay out of his business. It wasn't just a casual suggestion, it felt like a threat. I kept telling myself to leave it alone. People have secrets, and maybe it was better not to know. But then I'd see Mr. Harris out in the neighborhood, laughing with kids, helping old Mrs. Dalton carry her groceries, fixing a neighbor's fence, and I couldn't stop wondering. How could the same man be both so kind and so dangerous? The night walk. It happened on a Thursday. I'd gone to bed early, but around midnight, I woke up thirsty. On my way to the kitchen, I noticed something through the curtains movement. It was Mr. Harris, slipping out of his house. He wasn't wearing his usual sharp suit. This time, he had on a dark hoodie, gloves, and a backpack slung over his shoulder. He looked around the street carefully before heading toward the end of the block. I knew it was stupid, but curiosity took over. I grabbed my jacket and followed from a distance, keeping to the shadows. He walked quickly, turning down side streets until we reached the edge of the neighborhood, where the houses gave way to an empty lot. There, under the dim glow of a single streetlight, two men waited. One of them was the same guy from before, leather jacket, tattoos. The other I didn't recognize. I stayed hidden behind a tree, straining to hear. The exchange. Mr. Harris pulled something from his backpack, a thick envelope, and handed it to the man in the jacket. In return, the man gave him a small metal briefcase. Harris opened it slightly, glanced inside, then closed it quickly. That's when I heard the tattooed man say, "The boss says this is the last time. You know the rules." Mr. Harris's voice was low, but sharp. "Tell the boss I'll decide when it's the last time." The words made my stomach twist. This wasn't just some side hustle. Whatever this was, it was big and dangerous. Suddenly, Harris's head turned, scanning the darkness. I ducked low behind the tree, heart pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it. After a tense moment, they finished their exchange and walked away in separate directions. The discovery. When I got home, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with questions. What was in that briefcase? Money? Weapons? Something worse? The next morning, I saw him watering his plants like nothing had happened. He waved cheerfully, but his eyes lingered on me for just a second too long. It was as if he was silently asking, "Did you see something last night?" That same day, something happened that made my blood run cold. I came home from work and found an envelope taped to my front door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 4 words written in bold black ink. Mind your own business. There was no name, no explanation, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly who it was from. The unmasking begins. I decided to play it smart. I acted normal around him, smiling and making small talk whenever we crossed paths. But behind the scenes, I started digging. I asked a few trusted neighbors if they knew anything about him. Most said the same thing. He'd moved in quietly, kept to himself at first, then suddenly became everyone's favorite neighbor. But nobody knew where he came from or what he did for a living. I even searched his name online, Michael Harris. But nothing came up. No social media, no work history, not even an old school record. It was like he didn't exist before moving here. One evening, I saw an opportunity. He'd left his car parked in the driveway, and through the passenger side window, I noticed a leather folder sitting on the seat. I knew I shouldn't, but I opened the door. Inside the folder was a set of documents, a fake driver's license, several business cards with different company names, and a passport, with a different name entirely. That's when it hit me. Mr. Harris wasn't just hiding something. He was someone else entirely. The trap. I thought about going to the police, but what would I say? My neighbor is suspicious? Without proof, they wouldn't take me seriously. And if he found out I'd tried, I might end up worse than that warning note. So I made a plan. I'd catch him in the act. Over the next week, I kept my eyes open at night. And sure enough, on a rainy Friday, I saw him leave again, same hoodie, same backpack. This time, I followed more carefully, staying far behind. He headed to the abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. The windows were boarded up, but faint light spilled out from cracks in the wood. I crept closer, my heart pounding harder with every step. Through a small gap, I saw him inside with 6 other men, all gathered around a table covered in stacks of cash and small plastic bags filled with white powder. And in that moment, the perfect neighbor I thought I knew was gone. Too close to the truth. I stayed crouched by that warehouse window, the rain soaking through my jacket, my breath fogging the glass. Inside, the men spoke in low, sharp voices. I couldn't catch every word, but I didn't need to. The scene spoke for itself, bundles of cash, plastic bags of drugs, and weapons lying casually on the table. And there was Mr. Harris, the man who waved to kids and baked muffins for neighbors, sitting at the head of the table like he was in charge. I felt a sick twist in my stomach. This wasn't just shady business deals or mysterious phone calls. This was criminal. Dangerous. I pulled out my phone, my fingers shaking, and snapped a few photos through the crack. But the moment the camera clicked, I knew I'd made a mistake. The glance. Mr. Harris's head suddenly turned toward the window. His eyes narrowed. For a second, I was sure he saw me. I ducked away, pressing myself against the cold brick wall, praying he hadn't spotted me. I waited, heart pounding, until I heard the sound of chairs scraping inside and voices growing louder. I didn't stick around to find out more. I slipped back into the darkness, jogging home as fast as I could. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it in my head, his eyes scanning the window, the way the men looked ready for violence at the slightest excuse. If he had seen me, if he even suspected, I might already be in danger. The visit. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Mr. Harris was standing there, holding a plate of cookies, smiling like always. "Thought I'd bring these over," he said warmly. "Baked them this morning." I forced a smile, thanked him, and took the plate. But then he leaned slightly closer, his voice dropping. "You were out late last night, weren't you?" My heart skipped. "I went for a walk," I said, trying to sound casual. His smile didn't change, but his eyes did. They sharpened, like a knife hidden in plain sight. "Be careful walking at night," he said softly. "Some places aren't safe after dark." Then he turned and walked away. I closed the door, my hands trembling. That wasn't small talk. That was a warning. The trap tightens. I decided it was time to go to the police, but the problem was, I didn't know who I could trust. If Harris had connections in organized crime, there was a chance he had connections in law enforcement too. I printed the photos I'd taken, sealed them in an envelope, and hid them under a loose floorboard in my bedroom. Just in case. But 2 nights later, I woke to a sound that froze me in place. The sound of someone moving inside my house. I grabbed the baseball bat from under my bed and crept toward the living room. The front door was slightly open, the cold night air drifting in. On my coffee table sat the plate of cookies Harris had given me. But now there was a single note beside it. It read, "Stop looking, Daniel." A desperate move. I knew then that I had no choice. I couldn't stay here. If I did, I'd either disappear quietly or end up as a headline in the morning paper. The next day, I called an old friend who worked in a different city, someone I could trust. I told him just enough to make him understand I needed help. He agreed to put me in touch with a detective he knew personally, someone off the books. We arranged to meet in 3 days. Until then, I kept my head down, avoiding Harris whenever I could. But the more I tried to stay out of sight, the more I felt his presence. He'd be outside when I left for work. I'd catch glimpses of him watching from his window when I came home. It was like living next to a shadow, one that knew my every move. The final straw. The night before I was supposed to meet the detective, I came home to find my front door unlocked. My stomach dropped as I stepped inside. Everything looked normal at first, until I went to my bedroom. The floorboard where I'd hidden the envelope was pried up. The photos were gone. On my pillow was another note. This time it said, "We need to talk." It wasn't signed, but it didn't have to be. Mr. Harris knew I had seen too much, and now he was coming for me. The confrontation. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room with the lights off, staring at that note on my pillow. "We need to talk." Part of me wanted to run, pack a bag, leave in the middle of the night, disappear before he could do whatever he planned. But another part of me, the part that had been gnawing with curiosity for weeks, wanted answers. If I ran now, I'd never know the truth. By morning, I had made my decision. I would face him. The invitation. I walked next door and knocked on his door. My heart was thudding like a drum. After a few seconds, he opened it, looking as calm and well-groomed as ever. "Daniel," he said, smiling, "I was just about to come see you." "Let's talk," I said firmly. He stepped aside and let me in. The air inside was heavy, tense. His living room looked like it always did, neat, organized, perfect, but the atmosphere felt different, like the calm before a storm. We sat across from each other. I didn't waste time. "I know who you are, Harris. Or should I say, whatever your real name is. I've seen what you do. I saw you at the warehouse." The mask slips. For the first time since I'd met him, his smile faded completely. His eyes stayed locked on mine, cold and sharp. "I thought you might have seen too much," he said quietly. "That's why I left you those warnings." "Why?" I asked. "Why hide behind this perfect neighbor act? Why live 2 lives? He leaned back, sighing. "Because it's the only way to survive." "You think I enjoy this? You think I wanted to get into this business?" "I didn't. I had debts, Daniel. Big ones. People I couldn't say no to. So, I became useful to them. And the only way to keep the police off my back, the only way to keep this neighborhood safe from what I'm involved in, was to become the man everyone liked. The man nobody would suspect. The unexpected truth." I frowned. "Safe? You've been dealing drugs and money laundering right under our noses." His voice hardened. "And because of me, this street has never been touched. Do you think those gangs wouldn't move in here if I wasn't a middleman? They'd be kicking in doors, robbing houses, hurting people. I keep them away. I pay them off, I keep them happy, and in exchange this place stays quiet." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to call him a liar, to tell him he was just making excuses for being a criminal. But another part of me remembered every late-night scream, every dangerous man I'd seen near him, and wondered, was he telling the truth? The offer. Then he leaned forward, his tone changing. "Daniel, I like you. You're smart. You're cautious. You could help me. Keep an eye on things when I'm not around. And in return, you'll never have to worry about money again." It felt like a trap, a velvet-covered cage. The kind you step into thinking you can leave anytime, but you never do. I shook my head. "I'm not like you." He gave a small, humorless smile. "That's what they all say at first. The line in the sand." I stood up. "No. Whatever you've told yourself to justify what you do. I'm not part of it. And I won't stay quiet about what I've seen." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment the room felt colder. "If you go to the police, Daniel, you won't make it to the station." I didn't flinch. If you hurt me, everyone will know. I've already made sure of it. That wasn't entirely true, but I needed him to believe it. He studied me for a long moment, then leaned back again, the mask sliding back over his face. You're braver than most, he said softly. That's going to get you killed one day. Walking away. I left his house, my pulse still racing. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living next to him. I had to finish what I started, even if it meant putting myself in danger. The meeting with the off-the-books detective was only hours away. If I could get my story out, maybe I could finally end this. But deep down, I had a sinking feeling that Mr. Harris wasn't finished with me yet. The last face. The next morning was gray and heavy, the kind of sky that feels like it's pressing down on you. I left the house with nothing but a small backpack. The envelope of evidence was gone, but I still had my phone, my words, and the truth. The meeting with the detective was set for 10 a.m. at a quiet coffee shop across town. I kept checking behind me as I walked to the bus stop. Every sound, every passing car made my heart jump. I thought I was in the clear, until a black sedan slowed beside me. The window rolled down. Mr. Harris. The ride. Get in, Daniel, he said, his voice calm but with that razor edge beneath it. We need to finish our talk. I stood frozen for a moment, then slowly got in. Running now would only make me look guilty, or scared. And fear was exactly what he thrived on. The car ride was silent. He drove us away from the neighborhood, out toward the industrial district, where the streets were empty and the air smelled of metal and oil. Finally, he parked near the old shipping docks and turned to me. The truth unmasked. You think you're a hero, he said quietly. You think you're going to take me down, clean up the streets. But the truth is, Daniel, men like me don't go away. You cut off one head, 2 more grow back. The system protects us because it needs us. I met his gaze. Then maybe I'm not trying to change the whole system. Maybe I just want to stop you. He laughed, not a warm laugh, but a cold, empty one. You have no idea what you're walking into. I've seen people like you before. Brave, stubborn, sure they can make a difference. They either join us, or they disappear. The stand. I took a deep breath. I'd rather disappear than become you. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the sound of the waves slapping against the dock the only noise between us. Then, to my surprise, his expression changed, not to anger, but to something almost like respect. You've got guts, he said. But guts don't keep you alive. The twist. Before I could react, another car pulled up. A man in plain clothes stepped out, the detective my friend had told me about. He didn't look surprised to see Harris. In fact, they shook hands. I realized then that Harris hadn't been lying about having people in law enforcement. My stomach dropped. The detective glanced at me. We'll take it from here, Daniel. Go home. I opened my mouth to protest, but Harris cut me off. Listen to him. This is bigger than you. Walk away while you still can. The final choice. I walked away from that dock, my head spinning. I didn't get my victory. I didn't take him down. The man with 2 faces was still out there, smiling at neighbors, running his empire at night. But I'd learned something that day. Sometimes, courage isn't about winning the war. Sometimes it's about refusing to become what you hate, no matter how much easier it would be. I moved out of that neighborhood a month later. I started fresh in a place where I didn't have to look over my shoulder. But I never forgot Mr. Harris. Because the truth is, there are a lot of people like him in this world. People who hide behind kindness, people who wear 2 faces. And you won't always be able to stop them. But you can make a choice. You can choose to keep your own face clean. You can choose not to wear a mask. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do.